Hey Jack, how's it going?
Good morning.
Good to see you. Yeah, great to be
Yeah,
here
you as well.
today. Um, let's just do a quick tech check and make sure, yeah, folks are flowing in. We'll give folks a minute. Um, I know we spun this up relatively quickly. Um, I guess, not surprised to see so much interest in today's topic, awareness of Salesforce, the sensitivity of the data. The relevant risks of protecting that data continues to increase. That awareness has increased for many of the folks that are joining us today within the Salesforce ecosystem, Salesforce customers. And unfortunately, that awareness has also continued to increase with some bad actors that are trying to take advantage of some of those possible vulnerabilities that exist or shared responsibilities that aren't being managed effectively. And so, yeah, good to be here today. Great that so many folks are hoping to learn more and mitigate these risks. We calling this an office hour, so we want to be fairly, keep this interactive. What we'll do quickly, we do have a few slides. We'll go through what's been happening over the last bunch of months. I guess originally since Salesforce originally put out a blog about connected apps in March. We'll go through some key foundational pieces that everyone needs to understand related to how some of these attacks have been occurring. And then finally some actions that you can take to mitigate. Hopefully you get some key nuggets that you can take back to your organization, some steps to make change and mitigate these risks as quickly as possible, and prioritizing the right mitigation steps that you can take internally based on the tools that you have. So with that, we'll try to keep things interactive. I'll be monitoring the Q&A. We'll also have time at the end for Q&A. Typically, we'll do these. We like to bound it to 30 minutes, but given the sensitivity and the criticality and some of the urgency, for Q&A, we'll keep on as long as we'll keep on a little bit longer to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. And with that, Jack, good to see you again. Maybe for those that don't know, just some context of who you are and kind of what informs your perspective. I know we've got a pretty big group here today.
Yeah, hey everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Jack McGlinchey, CEO and co-founder here at Arovy. Um, yeah, a little bit about Arovy. We have been working on this problem since about 2019, over 250 customers. We're backed by Salesforce Ventures as well as some great VCs. But yeah, as Brian mentioned, this is something that's we've been really passionate about, something that we've been advocating people protect against. And so hopefully today we can really do a good job of just filling in the gaps as far as knowledge goes, and then we've got some really great takeaways as well, so that you and the team can hopefully get past this and set yourselves up for future success.
Cool. Yeah, and we've recently gone through a rebrand. So we were formerly known as Sonar Software. So check us out on LinkedIn, arovy.com, and let us know what you think. So with that, just some context. So yeah, I mentioned it already, Jack, but I guess the original blog post from Salesforce came out in around March. A lot of things have been happening. A couple of specific, incidents, June, August. Maybe just I think would be helpful is just talk through the types of things that are happening. And obviously you see, for those that are net new, if you use your latest search capability, you can find a lot of the information. But what are the ways that these some of these bad actors are kind of trying to get into and with some success getting into customer Salesforce environments?
Yeah, so earlier this year, Salesforce put out a blog post talking about these vishing attacks that were happening. Essentially, what was happening is they were using some really sophisticated attacks to target Salesforce administrators at some of the biggest companies in the world, and they were being very successful at it. Um, over the summer, we saw a lot of these companies like Google and Cisco and Alliance Health or Alliance Life get attacked, and they were really able to extract these data from the entire instance of these Salesforce by basically the hackers were tricking these admins into giving basically logging into Salesforce is probably the best way I could describe it. But they weren't downloading any applications. They weren't giving the hackers any information. They thought it was their IT department asking them for help. So they were very sophisticated. So starting on Tuesday, Salesforce is rolling out a pretty big change to how connected apps work. They're going to require teams to go in and actually install all new applications, and then at some point they're going to require teams to go in and actually review the applications that are connected. It's a pretty disruptive change, and we've covered that in previous webinars before. But I think what's interesting about this new one that's happened. Actually, I'll take a step back. The hackers actually announced on some of the forums that this wasn't the only attack. More were going to be coming. People didn't really understand what that meant. And then this week we were presented with the Salesloft Drift hack. I'll talk about it technically, but I think first it's best to start off with an analogy. In this first attack, they were tricking people into giving them the key to their car. In this second attack, I think the best analogy is you pulled your car up to the valet and they went to the valet stand and took all of the keys for every car in the parking lot. And that's how they were able to basically get away with these thefts. And so what that means is that the key is the OAuth token. This is how Salesforce and basically every application interacts with each other. But once you have that OAuth token, you essentially have stolen the identity of the integration user that's being used to interact with these applications. And so whatever access that integration user has, the hacker had access to. And from what we've seen through our investigations, it was pretty significant. So, Brian, I think we covered a lot there, but anything I missed?
No, maybe the just thing that I would add on the strategy side is it's also an indication that the bad actors are attacking other risk surfaces that directly affect Salesforce and get access into Salesforce. And so the vishing was one. They proved that they could be successful, and then they did it more. And there was a release in June, and then another release of a bunch of different companies in August, and they're continuing to do that more, and they're continuing to scale that, up and down market. And now that they've identified another one, they'll continue to do that more. So the fact that this happened to Drift does not have a very, I have a bespoke architecture with OAuth that doesn't exist across other connected apps. It's the same architecture, and it's likely that these attackers are also trying to address other applications similar to Drift. And it's also likely that they're looking for novel ways to get access to Salesforce data. And so again, that awareness that everyone's here and hopefully getting educated and mitigating is amazing, but the hackers and the bad actors are going just as quick and maybe even faster. So, and I see a question come in, but why don't we keep going? We'll go through a couple more slides just to set context. And Peter, we did get your question.
Yep. So,
yeah,
no, it's all good. So just to give people an idea of the scope of this attack, so these are some screenshots from our applications as well as some raw logs. If you go and read the post that Google put out, or you look at maybe some of the information's out there, I think a lot of people are really downplaying how much data was actually accessed. So what you see on the right here is we call our access graph. Drift here is in the center, and then each of those, they're supposed to be lines, but because there's so many objects being accessed, you can just tell that the surface area was pretty massive. So these are every single object that was accessed that we saw in a specific example. On the left here, you can see these are some of the raw logs that we've been reviewing with customers by hand, just for folks that we've been helping out. But what I'll call out is that the method here is not just get requests or queries. They're actually pushing data into the customer's Salesforce as well. So you don't have to worry about data just being leaked. They're actually creating data as well. And then, just some examples in the bottom, down to the field level, like applications, just seeing all sorts of crazy new activity. So you can see the spike there on August 12th was some of the API volume that we identified. And then, like I said, the main thing to call out here is the surface area was huge. It wasn't just, user data leaking or some contacts, it was hundreds. I think we saw one customer had 725 different objects being accessed. And then, like I said, they're not just querying data; they're also posting data into the Salesforce instance as well. So this was pretty big. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about why this happened. So security gaps. So in instances like this, when there is one point of failure, that's when the attacks are most successful. So the single point of failure in this instance was the Drift's OAuth token table was somehow compromised, and they were able to access every customer of Drift's OAuth token. Again, in these situations, whether it be vishing, where the admins are the single point of failure because they have a lot of controls and they can bypass security settings. But when current processes integrations lack verification and oversight, it really can be a failure. So a lot of people have been chalking up the vishing attack to an education problem, or not hiring strong people, or maybe some sort of people problem. This one was not a people problem, at least as far as you're concerned with managing your Salesforce. Really, the only way to prevent something like this is if you have verification and oversight on your integrations. You need real-time monitoring, you need real-time observability. This wasn't someone being dumb, at least in terms of managing your Salesforce. And again, I go back to this, but Salesforce teams aren't security experts either. We're really pushing for security teams and operations teams to partner. If you're an operations person on this call, reach out to your security team, ask them for any sort of advice they can offer, and vice versa. If you're on the security side, really dig in with your Salesforce teams. They're underwater with tickets trying to keep the business moving forward. But at the end of the day, they also need a partner on the security side. And so if your team says, no, we've got it handled, just remember they're not security experts, and teams holding each other accountable and really working as partners is definitely better than each team kind of tossing their responsibility over the fence. And like I mentioned, a single vendor having a security lapse in all of your data can be compromised. And so it's just super important to have a lot of these things in place. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that Salesforce offers by default, or they're calling secure by default. Obviously, they've got things like profiles and permissions. If the integration user in this situation had been following a principle of least privilege, the surface area of the attack might have been smaller. It would not have stopped the breach, but the impact would have been smaller. Unfortunately, things like MFA, access controls, those would not have helped in this situation. They're super important. We highly recommend them. But in this specific situation, they wouldn't have done anything because they were using an OAuth token that basically bypasses all of those or they happen much earlier in the process. The one thing I will call out is that if you have vendors that you can reach out to for this, this is something that we have set up, but we recommend that vendors have static IP addresses. Salesforce allows you to configure trusted IPs for those specific integration users. And basically, this would have been one way to help prevent the attack, because the hackers were using separate IP addresses to access the data. This is something Salesforce offers out of the box. Unfortunately, not all vendors do this. AWS doesn't have this out of the box. You've got to go in and do some work, but it is just another level of security that we do recommend. And then one of the last pieces I'll mention, we cannot recommend the Salesforce Shield add-on enough. We're having conversations with customers, and if they do not have event monitoring today, there is absolutely zero way possible to understand the impact of the hack, or if you were attacked at all. You can go in and check and see if you had Drift integrated, but if you do not have the Salesforce event monitoring add-on, unfortunately, there's no data available to tell you what they took, what they updated. You're going to be flying blind without it. And so I cannot recommend that product enough. And then finally, the big connected app changes that I mentioned on Tuesday, none of those changes, none of the work that the team's gonna have to take on to fix the other vishing vulnerability is gonna address this one. It's just an entirely separate vector, and it's just something I'll call out, like that doesn't fix this problem.
Yeah, and I'm just looking, yeah, we do have a couple questions, but why don't we, what, let's go, we have just 3 more slides, and why don't we go through these 3 slides and then we'll do a lightning round on questions.
Yep.
So yeah, go
Great.
ahead.
Yeah. So the first thing you do is review your existing connected applications. And I would specifically reach out to vendors, ask for their security standards on how they're protecting them, making sure that, things like, are the OAuth tokens encrypted? Who has access to the OAuth tokens? Just making sure that those things are really buttoned up. And if they don't have a good answer for them, you should not have it integrated into your Salesforce until they do. This is probably the best justification for not using random bespoke Salesforce tools on the internet. I know they're super helpful. Open source is great, but the OAuth tokens are the key. And if those aren't being treated in a really, really secure fashion, this clearly just exposes, just how dangerous they can be. Peter, for your question, Peter asked, how do I decide the best refresh token policy? Should always be immediately expire refresh token. What's the best IP relaxation policy? So my recommendation is refresh token is valid until revoked. Unfortunately, this isn't, it's not the most secure, but it provides the best balance between things working and security. So the first thing is that if you go more severe than this, it will cause unexpected authentication failures. People will have to go in and re-authenticate apps. It can provide it just provides a good level of operational stability. And then the users will actually use the apps that you're buying. Just a few options that are available. You can refresh tokens. They can expire after a certain amount of time. This is probably the next one that I would recommend. If you do want to force the tokens to expire, like I did speak to a couple customers that had used Drift in the past. They were no longer using Drift, but the OAuth token, was still valid. You could probably set it for the length of the contract, and then when the contract expires or renews, you'll have to go in and re-authenticate it. But at least you provide some additional. It could just provide some additional security there. If you're properly reviewing your connected apps and you block it, that's when that is valid until revoked happens. But if you select something like refresh token expires immediately, that will require the user to re-authenticate every single session, and it will. And on average, we see 57 applications connected to every Salesforce, and so for 57 apps across the org, people are going to have to re-authenticate every single session. If you've got server to server kind of connections between these where they're syncing data frequently, it's just not going to work operationally. So I would either set some sort of expiration where you go in and it aligns with your internal review processes. But again, that's going to have some level of disruption, whereas the refresh token is valid until revoked. It's sort of a balance between what you need operationally and how much extra overhead you're willing to digest. But the expires immediately is basically not gonna. I don't know why it exists, because it doesn't. It makes these tokens basically unusable from a business standpoint.
Yeah,
Anyway,
maybe the add that I would add, Jack, on that is for Peter. A lot of it depends on there's always a balance between the security controls versus how tight you are versus how restrictive you are. And one of the key inputs to that is the data that you have. So what data is it? How sensitive is it? How critical is it if it were to kind of be affected or get in the hands of someone else? And that that's a good baseline to inform how restrictive you should be or not. But go ahead, Jack.
Yep. Yeah, so someone else asked a question, how do I know if I have Drift connected? Will it show up in connected apps? The answer is yes. You can go into setup, look at the manage connected apps part of the page. You'll see Drift listed there. This kind of ties into the second step here under review, but you should install the application so that you can add some security controls to it. Or you can block it if you don't want it anymore, but it will show up under that list. You'll have the ability to install or block it. And one other thing, there's a column in that table that says last used. If that last use date is probably before August, I think they said that the period of the incident was the 8th through the 18th. Our customer base, for the people that we saw it impacted, it was really around the 12th to the 13th. If it says the last use is before August 1st, I would feel generally confident that this isn't an issue. If it was last used after that period, you may want to investigate the situation because you may have been impacted. And yeah, finally, if your vendors aren't SOC 2 or ISO 27K certified, for me that's a non-starter. We don't work with any vendors that aren't, just because this OAuth token incident is a ticking time bomb. These industry standard practices ensure databases are encrypted, things like that. Well, they don't ensure it, as we saw with Drift, but they definitely can help push teams to do those right things. And then finally, as I mentioned before, and say it again, Salesforce Shield is a great investment. The field audit trail will help if they're updating data. You have some opportunity to at least understand what they changed and roll it back. And then the event monitoring is going to allow you to understand what was accessed. So without those two things, any sort of recovery is kind of impossible. Then finally, the last thing I'll say, like, this isn't a one and done thing. This is now an ongoing process that should be added to your security posture. You need ongoing monitoring and alerting for connected app behavior. You need to review permissions and ensure privileged use access. And you need to do it frequently. We recommend no less than quarterly. If you're able to do it in real time, especially with the ongoing monitoring and alerting, that's obviously great. But these things are going to continue to happen. As we've seen, now we've got new attack vectors. They're going to continue to attack every single vendor that is built on the Salesforce platform. They're going to leverage those tokens because this is now the difference between this one and the vishing attacks is that Salesforce can't fix this one. This is going to, as part of the shared responsibility model, this is going to fall on ops and security teams. And then finally, other security vendors are going to make the claim to you that they solve for this. I've worked in this space we've been tackling this problem for 6 years. Obviously, we claim that we solve it, and we're happy to prove it. Other people are going to claim they do it. I would just ask, if you do evaluate them, make them prove it for you. What we care about most is that you're protected. If you don't want to use our software, like, I completely understand, but make them prove it, because this is a really sophisticated attack. This wasn't using some generic thing that you can apply to every other SaaS vendor that you use. It's super Salesforce specific. So we just ask you make them prove it, because it's very specific and very sophisticated. So like I said, we care that you're protected, and I'll just leave you with that last piece.
Cool. Yeah, and I know we're getting close to the bottom. Maybe just a couple of foundational pieces for context. And I know we have a couple more questions, but we can go to the next slide. Just a couple foundational pieces that Jack hit on that I think we just want to make sure that you hear. You should have a data dictionary. This enables context. This allows you to investigate. This allows you to say, prove what data might have gone to which applications, prove if the data has been sensitive in nature, and it gives you the context also to assess what security controls and how restricted to be. So you should have a data dictionary. It should persist and be accurate. If you don't have one, Arovy, for those that aren't familiar, are already using us. We do. So, but you should have a data dictionary. Maybe the last thing, in terms of your operational solutions to reduce these risks, is you need multiple levels of observability. So Jack talked about single points of failure. There are single points of failure right now that have been taken advantage of, at least in a couple of these use cases, that are very different. Across your operating environment, there are probably other single points of failure. Observability is critical. Things like event monitoring are critical. And obviously, or maybe some of the things that we do on top of the event monitoring to make it easier to understand and manage those connected apps. But you should have these two things as foundational pieces to help you be successful. And more important now than ever, because as Jack said, the volume's only going to increase, and it's already getting more automated and more scalable. So it's no longer just trying to get into one environment. It's how do we get into hundreds of environments at the same time? And so it's going to go across the ecosystem, not just at the largest where some of the environment's been so far. Did we lose Jack? Oh, here it comes back. All right. So why don't we do Jack, you back with us? Having some connectivity issues.
Sorry, guys.
You there? Cool.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yep, good to go. Sorry about that.
All right, cool. So Arovy.com, obviously, and Jack and I, LinkedIn, we want to be a resource regardless of whether you decide that our solution helps. Ultimately, we want to make sure that everyone's mitigating the risks that they should. So with that, why don't we go into to open questions? Jack, there was a question around event monitoring. So I have event monitoring. What should I do? How can I use that to identify something like drift?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's two ways to access the data. The first is you can use Analytics Studio. Frankly, if you don't have a master's in data analytics, it can be pretty challenging to use. I'm sorry, Brian, am I breaking up again?
No, you're good. Maybe turn your
Okay.
video off. No,
the other way is to download the logs into a CSV file and then start investigating it from there. There are a few different fingerprints that we've identified. There are some user agents that you can look at in order to identify if it was drift or not. But there is a in the file itself, there is a you're going to be wanting to look at the REST API event type. They were primarily using the what's that, Brian?
No, you're good. You're breaking up. You still there, Jack?
Yeah, I switched the hotspot. Hopefully this is better.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Where did I lose everyone?
No, we did this on short notice. I mean, we want, we put this on short notice because we thought it was important. So I'm sure everyone understands.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where I broke off. You're gonna have to comb through the logs manually. Like I said, you're looking at the REST API event type. You're gonna have to identify, if you were hit when. Salesforce support has some ability to help you, but they are not allowed to review the logs with you. But they've reached out to everyone that has been impacted, or they claimed they have. So if you haven't gotten an email from them, you're probably a little safer. But I would still go through and review logs just in case. One thing you can do is look at the logs for when normal behavior occurred and try and compare differences in the client IP address. We do know they were using AWS to run the scripts that they were running. So they're going to look like they came from AWS, but they will be different than what the Drift servers were normally using. And then you can also filter it down to the user. This is why it's really important to use integration users, so you can narrow it down. But unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of manual combing. If you have any questions, I'm happy to hop on a call with anyone one-on-one and go through this with you. I know this is super stressful, and so we're here to help. Like I said, I've been reviewing logs with customers over the last 48 hours or so, and I'm happy to keep doing it if it's helpful. One last question I saw was we previously have Drift connected, and I'm pretty sure it's in the removed OAuth access from a few weeks back, but they're not seeing it on the connected apps list. So what you're going to want to do is actually I'll share my screen real quick, Emmett, if that's all right, just so everyone knows where to go to look for this. So there's a tab here called Connected Apps OAuth Usage. This will list all of the applications that are connected to your Salesforce. What you'll see here is this user count, And what you actually want to do is click into that. And that will show you when it was last used on every single user. So this last use date is the one that's really important for determining the impact. One thing I'll note is that if you have blocked it or uninstalled it at any point, it will show up all the way at the end of the list. There's no way to filter it. You got to kind of like page through all of these. So you'll see here, we've blocked all of these applications and they show up at the end. But you want to click into that user count. If it says 0, that means there's no users authenticated. And so if there's no users authenticated, you're not going to be able to see that information. So that one's going to be a little difficult to use. You may have to lean more into the event monitoring data if you don't have any data there. I wouldn't consider this a definitive list, but it does give you a clue on whether or not it's been used recently. But if it's not there, you'll have to rely on the event monitoring data. The last thing I'll mention
Great.
is if you do have event monitoring, last thing, if you do have event monitoring, there are event monitoring settings. By default, they are not turned on. You need to come in here and generate event log files and go to the event manager and actually enable streaming and storing data for the events here. The anomaly events are great, but if you did not turn this on before the attack, you do not have any data. I know Salesforce is going to change this, so they're set up by default, but in this instance, they weren't. But I would go turn this on immediately if you have event monitoring, because it is not turned on by default. So you'll just want to come in here, enable storage, enable streaming, and then under the event monitoring settings, generate log files. Again, they're not on by default.
Yep. Yeah, we've had a couple questions, and maybe just, I know folks, I think some folks have had to drop off. But as Jack mentioned, we are a resource, and so many folks are dealing with this for the first time and dealing with some of the Shield capabilities for the first time. So if we can help, or if we can point you in the direction of other people that can help, we definitely will. We also do assessments, so as a standard offering. So I just wanted to point that out before maybe other folks have to go to their next meeting. But we had a couple more questions, Jack. So is the Salesforce Inspector Reloaded safe if it has been installed and you limit the users to those with a specific permission set or profile? My team is most worried about losing access to this as we add more security.
I'm not going to make any judgment calls in this call. So Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, if I'm correct, stores your OAuth token locally, but I don't know that for sure. If it's stored locally, it's more safe than if it's stored on their servers. I don't think they have servers, so it's probably a little safer. But again, I'm not sure. That's when I haven't played with the Inspector Reloaded recently, so I haven't played with it since they deprecated the old one, so I'm really not sure. I wish I had a better answer. For another question around the connected apps, if you don't see on the list, I would just double check to make sure that's true. I know Salesforce is going in and revoking tokens as well, and how that impacts what you see on the list may not be definitive. If you're an Arovy customer today, we may be able to help you dig into some of your data that we have access to give you a little bit better access. If you're not, we can comb through some more of the Salesforce data. We may be able to help there. My email, we're going to send it out afterwards, or we can send it out afterwards, and we can follow up one-on-one and just dig in to be 100% certain. There's another question. So just to confirm, did you say that Salesforce reached out to the impacted orgs? That's what the Google threat announcement said, is that they reached out to everyone. I've talked to customers that were reached out to Salesforce. Obviously, I can't say if they got everyone, but I do know that people have been reached out to, and that's what the announcement also said.
We'll do any other, still a pretty big group out there. Any other, I'll let this sit for a minute to see if anyone, any final questions. All right, parting thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, this is the first tech. It's going to keep happening. I think I think for a while the ecosystem has kind of ignored this, and I think if it's not at the forefront of everyone's mind now, it really should be. So we hope you take it seriously.
Yeah, and to Jack's point, we want to be a resource. This is new to many, and call the people that phone a friend, I think is what I've been saying. Phone a friend. There are people that have been doing, mitigating risk in Salesforce for many, 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 many years that you
Yep.
may never heard of. But there are real SMEs that know this inside and out and know there's one risk to be mitigated, and there's probably 10 or 12 others that you should consider. So phone a friend, and if you want to know who those SMEs are, ping us and we'll point you. If you don't want to talk to Jack or I, like, we'll point you to other people that are way smarter than us that that can help you along the way, because to Jack's point, this is just the next, and they're getting faster and they're getting more novel. And so this is just the next the drift
And
thing.
one clarifying thing: you do not have to be a customer to reach out to us. If you're just looking to get some questions answered, we're here to be helpful. So it doesn't have to be a sales call. It can just be a consultation, and we're here to help the ecosystem. So if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Brian. We'll be available.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We're around, so we'll send out our email, and the follow-up we'll send, and then feel free to ping us on LinkedIn, and we'll connect with everybody soon. And good luck, and for those here in the States, enjoy their long weekend. Thanks for spending some time with us.
All right. Take care, everyone.